On the 29th of August last year, I was just 1 kilometer outside of Rafah city on the Israeli side at the place called Kerem Shalom Crossing, where Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, so-called, has set up death traps to shoot hundreds of Palestinian children, youth, and anyone who could walk to get some aid to these 4 distribution sites. I heard explosions inside Gaza, near Rafah city at the time, and I was with the interfaith delegation of about 30 Jewish, Christian, Hindu, and myself as a token Buddhist to bear witness. I also saw the Israeli occupation force troops on Humvee and other vehicles, tanks, with their made in USA and made in Israel weapons, coming out after their morning rounds of genocidal slaughter for cold drinks for a break before they go back for the second round. On the way to Kerem Shalom Crossing, we stopped at this kibbutz inn, not too far from Nova Music Festival site. There were a number of Israeli human rights rabbis waiting to have a dialogue with our delegation. There were 2 Palestinian sisters from Michigan and from Washington, D.C., Tamara and Heber. They're descendants of the Nakba survivors, that they'd never been to their country of their ancestors. They refused to get off the bus to meet with the Israeli human rights rabbis and other activists because they just could not bear the thought of having to dialogue and hear the other side's story when we, from the bus, could hear the bombs exploding. Imagine that. The IOF airplanes and drones were dropping bombs and killing thousands of children a few miles away, and we were invited to have dialogue with these, good Israelis. And both out of solidarity and my own understanding of genocide as large-scale, premeditated destruction of a people, either in whole or in part, happening concurrently, I stayed with them on the bus. The rest of the delegation went to have a dialogue. The reason I refused to have a dialogue with the institutions or members of society that have crossed the line of destroying a people from the very foundation, physical, spiritual, educational, health, food systems, everything. It's simple. Once a society, once a political state, once a political regime reach a point of unleashing the genocidal destruction in the manner that is most unconcealed, most sadistic, in the way Israel has been doing for the last 2 years, it's simple. You cannot dialogue and come to an agreement with your genocidal killer. It will be like having a cup of tea with it would be like having a cup of tea with a bunch of SS officers at Auschwitz before you were marched to the gas chambers. I've been to Auschwitz 4 times. I made a film about it for the Burmese activists to educate what could happen once a society allows itself to be primed to go along with the political genocidal program of a political regime. Yeah? So it's not, what is happening in Israel is not just about Smotrich or Ben Gvir or Netanyahu or any political regime. This is the state that was conceived from the get-go genocidal. Munta Isaac, who we had a long conversation, said Israel is a terrorist state, a settler colony, built on genocide and terrorism. So we cannot have a dialogue with a genocidal state or society for that matter. Hear me out. You've all heard of, if not read, Mein Kampf by Hitler, 1925, the first publication. He wrote it in jail when he failed the first coup to take over Germany in 1923. A few months ago, about 40 former heads of security agencies, including Shabak or Shin Bet, Internal Security Agency, and IDF commanders, they got together, and one of them, Moshe Yalon, who held the defense minister's portfolio, former general, chief of staff of the Israeli army, IDF, said these words: Israel is pursuing, in quotes, these are his words, not mine, Mein Kampf in reverse. Today, it's no longer perverse, let alone criminal, to compare Israel to Nazi Germany of 1940. It's not an expression of fear and loathing of the Jewish people to say that Israeli society has already in that space of Nazi-like mental state. With that kind of state, dialogue is not possible. And so therefore, I think the call for military intervention, everyone agrees that Israel needs to be stopped. But as you know, the United States voted for this veto for the 6th time on Friday or last week. Even the most watered-down resolution calling for ceasefire, not to end the genocide, much less the end of the occupation. With this kind of entity, people are prepared to call Israel genocidal state. The regime there, fascist, messianic, all kinds of things, right? But that's only 50%. We cannot accuse a state credibly of being genocidal, acting like Nazis, and far worse because they are more sadistic, unconcealed. Auschwitz was set up with 5% of the documentation that was left undestroyed by the SS before the Soviet army moved in on the 27th of January 1945. They attempted to destroy the evidence. They knew what they were doing was wrong. Whereas in fact, Israeli today, IDF, they were live streaming. They were, bragging. They were boasting what they have done. There's another 50% that we need to say it out loud and openly. It is morally imperative, and it's also strategically necessary to call for the dismantling of Israel as an apartheid genocidal state. Finally, genocides are no conflict. Genocides are no wars. There is no conflict between Palestinian people of different faiths and the Jewish people. Genocide happening today is a one-sided attempt to exterminate the people for want of their land. Therefore, I call for dismantling Israel as apartheid state in exchange for peace and security of Israeli people. Thank you very much.